Chapter 7 addresses siblings of children with disabilities, and I'm not going to obviously read word for word on these slides, but take you through just a number of these slides because obviously in families we know that it's going to depend on the family system and what resources and extended family the family has available to them as to how sibling relationships end up. So the objectives in this chapter, there is some legislation, particularly that's important later in life for the siblings. We're going to look at a little bit on the evolving relationship within the family and indicate how severity of disability may impact sibling relationship. And finally, look at just a couple tactics to help relationships between siblings. So we do know that for all of us, if we have siblings, it can be the longest relationship in our life. And we also know that siblings' needs, though, particularly when you have this dynamic with and without disabilities, needs to be given attention throughout life. And 72% of children with disabilities, when they become adults, will continue to have support from a sibling. So siblings are really, really important, and they're going to help potentially play a role in all domains related to their sibling with a disability. And they're going to become even more important, that this relationship, I should say, is really important when a child does have a disability. And that the sibling without a disability will do a lot, potentially, do much more types of things that, than a household that does not have a child with disability in it. So some pieces of legislation that, again, play an important role primarily in adulthood are the Family Medical Leave Act, the Older Americans Act, the Lifespan Respite Care Act, the DDA Bill of Rights Act, and the Achieving a Better Life Experience Act. And these are generally all things that, again, become much more important to the adult siblings, particularly when parents or caregivers pass, because they may provide respite care, medical support, and aid in the home, etc. So again, these are lifelong relationships, and siblings may be playing a very great role. And just like in any other family, it's dependent on a number of things in terms of this ebb and flow of relationships. We know that transition periods in children's lives, maturity, family structure, and what's impacting the family will all play a part in this ebb and flow of relationship patterns. We have studied families, so there is a lot of research on all types of sibling relationships. We do know, unfortunately, that the more severe the level of disability, particularly a disability that involves significant behavior challenges in the home, will impact the sibling relationship. And a lot of studies point to a negative relationship. But such disability categories of Down syndrome, we've noted in the research a higher quality of relationship between siblings. So again, some research that has looked at these types of interactions and impact have looked at such things as behavior and also things like the maturity level, and noted that siblings without disabilities need to mature more quickly than when a sibling with a disability is in the home. And this is because these siblings are asked to and expected to take on more responsibilities potentially. And again, that's going to depend on the family system. But in many families, the sibling will either want to or be expected to take on different types of roles and activities with their sibling without disabilities. However, research has shown that as the sibling without disability gets older, and this should make sense to us, and they're really spreading out. They're moving into the community, their school. There may be an increase in embarrassment, or the reverse, an increase in tolerance for their sibling with a disability. Again, so much depends on the family system, but we do know that there's both positive and negative, and that we a lot of times think to the negative, but research points to many positive relationships and outcomes for siblings with and without disabilities. But we do know that siblings without disabilities, in the research, have shown that as they grow, they start to make life choices that will impact the family system to include their sibling with disabilities, such as where will I live, how to spend my money, that kind of thing. Siblings of individuals with disabilities, though, we know experience increased stress. Although, again, depending on the family system, this will vary. But despite the challenges, we know that families come out with, many families when they're surveyed talk about their resiliency and what their child or sibling with a disability has added to the family. So it just depends. So there's this transactional dynamic that goes on, and each member of the family, as we know from family systems theory, impacts one another. And a lot of it is going to depend on the parenting style as well as the stress level of the parent as to what type of sibling dynamic occurs. Research indicates a heightened expectation of sibling assistance by parents. So many parents do expect support. Again, so this could lead to early maturation. But what we do know from the research is open communication is a must-have. And both the handling of the child with and without disabilities is incredibly important. Allowing the child without disability to communicate their feelings. I don't want to do this. I'm angry I have to do this. I'm stressed out by doing this, that kind of thing, because that's going to happen periodically. And the stress exhibited by parents will impact all. Characteristics of siblings without disabilities, again, many of them are very positive, we find from the research. They're mature, they develop empathy and tolerance and social adjustment. But some of the negative things we see, again, not the whole time, but throughout their lives at different times, is depression, anger, acting out behaviorally, and fear of what's going to happen to me. What am I going to have to deal with the rest of my life? So sibling relationships should be derived from this open communication, a sense of comfort, and the relationship is going to be a predictor of what's going to happen later in life and emotional well-being. The ability for a sibling of an individual with a disability to cope will be dependent on all of these factors, and we've talked about these already, but some of the things that we want to point out again are socioeconomic status, also the resources available. Is there an extended family there to support? Is there financial resources? Some strategies to help siblings. Again, this open communication within the family is important. Acknowledging that they might feel angry at times or guilt. Recognizing they may be embarrassed at times. And recognizing that they might feel isolation if they're not allowed to have friends in the home or that they can't go out as much. Siblings a lot of times serve as teachers, not just in academic work, but also in behaviorally, language-wise, self-help skills. And so we can't assume that the sibling without the disability will know how to do these things. We actually might have to step in and support the family in teaching the non-disabled sibling how to do teaching. But realizing that this can be really great for both, because as we teach someone something, we feel good about ourselves, right? We're learning why we're teaching. It also is good for the social interaction between the two siblings. However, at times the child without disabilities may need counseling. And so counseling in school, counseling, individual counseling, we need to make sure that we find the right counselor. And there also are sibling support groups that we might need to access. And that takes us through Chapter 7.